Good morning, everyone. Before we stand for a moment of silence, I'd like to mention that two folks have passed away in Washington County. Larry Schlotterback, who was a longtime employee at the Herald Mail, and Mr. Jack Downing, a well-known auctioneer in the county, both passed away overnight. And as we stand for a moment of silence, would you keep them and their families in our prayers? Please stand for a moment of silence. Now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we'll call today's meeting to order. We'll begin with approval of 3 sets of minutes. We can do them individually all at one time. Commissioners, at your pleasure.
Make motion to approve the May 5th, May 12th, and May 19th minutes.
I have first, is Terry a second? I have a first and a second. Commissioners, any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Today we have some special guests. I'd like for Senator Serafini and Delegate Corderman to come forward. Gentlemen, welcome today. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
President, Mr. Vice President, members of the Board of County Commissioners. I don't usually read, but I want to make sure I speak succinctly here, which I probably won't do. And I would encourage the person who comes after me to wipe twice. So that's just because of, thank you for laughing. So as much as it's within my being, I try to live by a verse in the Bible called Romans 12:18. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. I try to do that in every way that I can. Why did I come today? I'm looking for...
Andrew, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we all do also. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that.
I would have no question about that. I can only speak for me and my failings, and they are great. And that's why I ask for forgiveness above and forgiveness laterally, because I need it in both places.
This will be my last interruption, but
That's fine.
We have feelings also.
I'm here not to hurt them, so how about that? But I'm looking for partners. We need some help. We need to work together. We all serve the same people for the most part. Many times I've stated publicly I would never want to be a county commissioner. It's a tough job. It's a hard job. You got to take care of a lot of people, and you're expected to be a lot of places. I am here today because I did watch the comments that were made last time, and I just want to be clear as far as efforts that are being made by the delegation, but I'm here speaking for me today. So just a little perspective so we understand where we're coming from. So technically, you guys meet once a week. I know you don't meet every time, and there's other meetings you have, but you're about 52 times a year that you have these formal meetings. We have 90 days that we meet. That's about 65 days a year that we are in session. And so that's our commitment. Obviously, there's more than that. You have a district of about 150,000 people. I have about 125,000. You split that across 5 of you. I'm the only senator in District 2. Yes, Senator Edwards covers part of Williamsport and West, but the 125,000 people in District 2 are mine. I have a staff of about 3 people. But those are the people that I'm responsible for. You guys work hard, but every night you go home. I spend 13 weeks in a hotel room. I've spent 3 to 4 years of my life in a hotel room by myself, apart from my family. Nobody asked me. I'm not here to complain. I'm just explaining what the differences is in how we do this. You have budget problems of millions. We have budget problems of between $2 and $4 billion right now. There are 4 Republicans on the Senate Budget and Tax Committee that have to speak for those of a conservative nature on a $40 billion budget, and we handle 2,000 bills a year. Some of you have other jobs. I understand that. That pulls you away. That's very hard. This is supposed to be a part-time job, but we know it's not for both of us. I have 1,100 households I take care of. I have 3,500 employees in retirement plans that I take care of with 8 employees. So I ask you some of the things that we've had to deal with lately. I had to sit through 9 hours of testimony about unemployment insurance. We've been handling hundreds, if not thousands, of calls, once again, with one staffer locally taking care of that. I've participated in weekly calls with the White House about COVID and other issues. I've participated in weekly calls with top economists. I've participated in weekly calls with local business leaders, nonprofits, and other groups, as well as some of you have participated in some of those. I worked with Rabbi Plost to secure ventilators for both Meredith and for UMS, and 1,500 pounds of plastic so that we can make shields. I have participated in 2 hours of legal training from EEOC, Department of Labor, so we could understand the risks and concerns. I've had multiple conversations with the CEO of Meredith and with UMS. I've had a lot of conversations with the Attorney General and the issues that we are here to speak of today. I did read Delegate Quarterman's, and I hope you did too, the Kathy Rowe opinion from the Attorney General. I've spoken to the Governor's Chief Legal Counsel. I've spoken to the state police officer that's the supervisor to the gentleman that Mr. Stoner speaks to often. I have signed 5 letters that have been sent to the governors. I've had communications with the Secretary of Health, Secretary of Commerce, the governor's previous chief of staff and current chief of staff. I have been in conversations with the budget officers. And so the idea that members of the delegation haven't been knocking on the governor's door, have not been interacting with his staff and other people in a constant manner is just absolutely not factual. And whether it was intended or not, perception is reality. So based on that, I have some questions for you or that we need to answer together. And I'm committed to work together because it's not going to help us to be divisive and point fingers, because we can point fingers all day long. Nothing's going to happen, and it's not going to help improve things. But the issue that I feel and we need to ask, and I want to be clear, you are the local health board. You are the local health board. And these issues are falling to you. I'd be glad to own them if I had to, but it's clear that in Comar that it resides with you. Not just the health officer. Mr. Stoner is not out there by himself. It's the local health board, which is the county commissioners. We have big issues with nursing homes. We need to know what's going on there. One of the White House calls that I participated on talked about their concern federally and that they would gather data and share it locally. I know that Delegate Quarterman has been asking, and I'm concerned with that as well. What are the numbers? What's being done? And what are those numbers? I'm concerned that $13 million of CARE funds came down, and Meredith has asked for $6 million, and they're still waiting. They just had to lay off people. They're down $20 million. They are the tip of the spear for us in our community. I would hope those monies could be allocated as soon as possible. You know, I really look back at my time here in the 12 years. You know, I look and ask, okay, how did PIA get here? How many of the 40 meetings that we had for the UIP did members of this county commissioners attend? The help with the Schmankes tube. You know, a very tough vote on Kerwin. Why? So you all wouldn't have to find $7 million. Senator Huff and I both, that was one of the major reasons we looked at our votes positively, knowing the heat we would take. We also secured millions of dollars in school construction now that planning and architectural design can be covered by the state. We helped fund the professional court bridge, working with the former Secretary of Transportation. We just recently helped with assistance for Boonesboro and Keedysville. I'm sure you're aware, hopefully you are, that they were about to lose water down there. There's a reason why more jobs for Marylanders included Washington County. There's a reason why disparity grants were increased, even though they're subject, and I did speak to Ms. Greaves about that. Tax credit for North Point. These are the things, just some, that I've been involved with, and they are not counting all the other ones of members of our delegation have worked on locally. The reality is that we do have to pull together because there will be businesses that will not survive this no matter what happens. The stimulus money will run out, and it's going to run out soon. And these businesses are not going to make it. And the issue is, what are we going to do jointly together to see how we can retrain and we can repurpose? Because this is disruptive, which means there will be other opportunities that will come about. North Point is an example of a transition, but we have to work together to do this. How will we help them? I want to say this time so you hear me clearly. The governor, when I talked to his chief legal counsel and others, has clearly said there's no way that he can be prescriptive down to the local level. That's why it's written in his roadmap, and that's why it's mentioned in many of his executive orders, that he's asking for the local health boards, in conjunction with the health officers, to interpret and work through these issues. Yeah, there are some black and white issues. I get that. I understand the resistance to try to go past that or where that is. But every step we take out, and the reality that we may have to come back, is still going to come down to that local health board has to make the decisions for local people and businesses. That's what the legal counsel has said in the interpretation. They cannot get granular. They cannot get specific. The legal counsel said to me, every time I post one, my phone lights up within 30 seconds of people questioning, how does this apply to me? The governor is not a health professional. The state police that we're calling on are not. Even the legal counsel are not. That's that local health board. That's why it's set, and that's why it's in place. And I understand the idea of once again, a final letter to say, this is how we're going to move unless you tell us differently. And I would tell you that I believe at some level that's correct. That's what the governor has been saying. It's up to you. You are the local health board. You are to work with Mr. Stoner. Mr. Stoner is in a very difficult place because he has two bosses. He serves at the pleasure of the local health board. That's you, the county commissioners, and the Secretary of Health. It's not one or the other. It's both. And so he's in a tough position. I understand that he's been going upline, but a lot of these lie right here with you all. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to point a finger. I'm here to support you and stand with you as you make those decisions. But that's what the governor has asked for. That's what the legal counsel has explained, and that's what the orders say. And those are the issues that we have to work with locally here. And how are we making those decisions? I'm thankful that we have great people at the Chamber of Commerce and other groups, and they're talking about decisions about what gauge are we going to use and how are we going to decide when we have to slow down or not. That's not their decision, frankly. I appreciate their efforts, but that's going to come from you. Which is the monitoring? Which is correct? How far do we go? As you can see in some counties, they haven't gone as far as the governor wanted. But what does it look like when we start to back up? Those are decisions that should not be. We should take input from the business community and others, but that comes from here. That's clear from the governor and other places. We all need to stay in our lanes. We need to let the health people, and I would say Mr. Stoner and Dr. Joshi from Meredith should be the ones that give us those ideas, because that's what we tried to prevent, was a surge at the hospital. And that's where it's going to show, and that's where the problems are going to lie. We need the legal people. Mr. Downey is your legal person. At the end of the day, we can have all these conversations, but you got to look to him, but you got to take what he tells you and decide. And if we want to talk about lining up with laws coming down from above, frankly, we already have bypassed that. The federal government says marijuana is illegal. We have growing facilities here because we have decided locally that medical marijuana is okay. That conflict of laws, both federal, state, that are different, have already been decided in one case here. So when it comes to CDC and federal guidelines and local, you all locally are going to have to decide how you do that. I'm not trying to point fingers, and I'm not trying to throw it off on you. I'm saying I'm standing here to support you as you make those decisions, but that is very, very clear. We have to decide how we're going to monitor in the future, what happens when we have to go slow, and we have to recognize that as we make each step, there's going to continually be questions. And everybody from the Secretary of Health to Secretary of Commerce to the Chief of Staff to the legal counsel to Major Doffelmeyer with state police have said at some level that's got to come down to you all. That's what the governor wants, and that's why we have local health boards to do it. I'm not asking you to go beyond what you feel are black and white. Clearly the mall and restaurants are tough decisions, but beyond that, there's a lot of other things that are clearly, whether you send a letter and asking to say, look, just so you know, we've heard what you said, We're going to live up to what Comar and the law says and make our decisions here, because that's what you've told us you want within those guidelines. And when we see differentials or we see discrepancies, we'll make our calls. Legal counsel, health officers, and this local board is where those decisions need to be made. And I will support you. But as far as extra clear directives and stuff from the governor, frankly, they're not coming. He's made it clear. Here it is. This is the way it's to work. Go forward. Thank you for the time.
Dr. Quarterman, would you like to?
Sure, and I'll only take just a few minutes here. And first, I appreciate the board having us here today, and I appreciate all the comments Senator Serafini has made here this afternoon. Without rehashing a lot of the things, obviously, I think our concern coming in here, as we've communicated, were some of the comments last week with the statement that we need the legislators to do more. And I think the senator has laid it out very eloquently of all the things that I know not just he has done, but also other members of the delegation. In regards, I know he sent on the Senate's behalf about 5 letters. I know I've signed at least 4 letters to the governor myself. Every day I have daily contact with probably about 8 to 10 other legislators across the state of Maryland, sometimes upwards to 50 to 75 text messages a day, different issues and different things that are happening in their counties, their localities, and how they're combating them, and things that they're doing that are different than what we're doing, but are still seem to be acceptable. We had over the last month, I've continued to reach out to all of you. And I appreciate Commissioner Meinl-Smith and Commissioner Kiefer's response, but quite frankly, I haven't heard from the rest of you. May 15th, I sent an email outlining the concerns of a local reopening plan and never heard any response other than the 2 aforementioned commissioners. On May 20th, I sent the letter with the Attorney General's opinion from another delegate, never heard any response. On May 27th, Commissioner Klein, I sent you a personal text message.
Which date?
May 27th. Still have not heard a response.
What was the message about?
The message was about we need to move forward. We need to do this together. And that, as Senator Serafini said.
So you say all your Facebook messages are all of us working together too?
No, this
They're
was
inciting
a personal text message I sent to you.
I'm asking you about the
Sure.
Facebook messages too, since you're criticizing us for not responding.
Well, I'm not criticizing, sir. I'm laying out facts here of
yeah,
times
you
that
are.
I've contacted
Yeah, you
you,
are.
and I have not been responded to. Okay, if you take that as criticism, then
Well, what do you want me to respond with?
perhaps maybe reaching out to some of the emails, communications we sent as far as devising a plan to work together for
I can
reopening.
state as the senator, we have, how many emails you guys getting? How many phone calls? I'm on the phone every night too, with a lot of stuff.
I understand.
I have one thing I got to say. And obviously, I always talk too much, and I don't want to get another blistering email. It was my intent. Let me start off by saying this. I've been a commissioner for 19 months. I've had maybe 10 minutes worth of phone calls from the legislation, 10 minutes from anybody. I've called people and never got a return call. 10 minutes. One didn't go so well with one of the delegates. Didn't go so well at all. The other one was somebody actually giving me some good input. That was it. 10 minutes in 19 months. That's pretty sad. I know the phone works both ways.
Have I never not responded to any of your phone calls?
Yeah, they weren't pleasant.
Have I ever not responded?
So you responded to one. I've talked to you at least once or maybe twice. 10 minutes. I'm saying 10 minutes.
The phone works both ways,
Total.
I agree.
Total. And I'll have to agree with President Klein. You're killing us on social media. You know how many calls I take in a week, or how many people I talk to? That's my job. I understand it. I'm ready to put the burden on my shoulders, but you don't make it easier. So my suggestion was stay off social media. In negative context to the commissioners.
So I guess you were responding to a post that I put up last week after you specifically called out the delegation.
I'm gonna argue, I sent this article out to 50-some people, and the interpretation you have is completely different. I received nothing but positive comments that we wanted to work together as partners, and the message that you're sharing today, we're trying to reinforce with you. You said you didn't want to point fingers, but you just started pointing fingers. We want to work together with you. There's more powers in numbers. We want to make sure that governor can hear us and we want you to be joining arm in arm with on that. Saying we didn't return this phone call, that phone call, that's history. Let's affirm today we want to move forward together and work together, pointing out our flaws or missed phone calls or under the bridge. Let's start today by asking each other to work together. I think that's the message we're trying to get today. Would you not, Senator Serafini, that we need to start anew and work together?
Absolutely.
And that's my message today. That's why I warmly greeted you today, warmly invited all of you in. Let's stop the finger pointing and pointing out our flaws, and let's assure each other that all of us are going to work together. There's a lot of people counting on us to be in agreement. So that's my response to your phone call. Let's join together and make sure the community knows we're in this for everybody.
So President Klein, I want to just be clear. I'm glad to work, but in this situation, we're coming in behind you. We are, by the governor's direction, subservient to you. We're glad to do what we can to try to get answers. We're not getting some answers to the same questions you're asking. That's a frustration. We all get that. But I agree with you. We don't need to point to each other, but we got to have communication. So, you know, I have 5 different email accounts that I respond to. All right. We all are busy. We all get different things. But if there's been a point, but honestly, everything that I've done, I've always been glad to have anybody come and help me. But all that list of things that I went through.
I thought it was a very good presentation myself, and I'm on board, but, there's a couple more fingers I'd like to forget about and threads that run through this whole thing.
Well, and I appreciate what President Klein said. I don't mean to interrupt Delegate Quarterman, but the reality is we're subservient to you all. We can try to bring to bear the conversations or the questions, but I'm going to tell you, and I've been saying this now for a month, additional direction and clarity is not coming from the second floor, what we call the second floor. It's in the written documents, and it's there.
There's one question I have for you. It creates a...
I didn't want to take his time if he had anything more he wanted to say.
There seems to be confusion, and to defend Mr. Stoner, I think in one of the phone conferences that we all had, that we all shared, the numerous calls, there was confusion over who was making the decision on the evaluation of the business opening. Has that been clarified? I think you mentioned the state police were involved in the review of that. Is that the proper source for that?
No, the proper source is you all.
Based on what the state
Yep.
and the executive
If you make a
order said.
decision that is contrary to the legal counsel, and the state police is on the enforcement line, and to be honest with you, he said, I don't know how we got ourselves in this position, because they're not health officers, and it's your local authority. If you look at the chain of command, and I think Mr. Stoner said that, it starts with a complaint. Somebody complains to him, he reviews. If he goes out and he talks to them and they don't respond in an appropriate way, then you go to Sheriff Mullendore. That would be your next, that's your enforcement arm. But the interpretation of these things are to be, the legal questions can start with Mr. Downey. The health questions should be Mr. Stoner and the health board. And I would tell you it'd be wise to speak to Dr. Joshi as much as possible, because that's where the surge is going to happen. But you all still have the responsibility, too, to understand a couple weeks ago, we had 1,600 deaths. 1,000 of those were in nursing homes. Sterling is an issue locally here. That's the local health board, not just him. That's you guys saying what's going on and bringing people to ask those questions. That's how it's to work. That's the feedback. If you really are stuck or don't know, but they're saying, you don't have to come up and ask us on every interpretation. We've had the conversation about the ice cream shop that started selling hot dogs and now they were okay. All right? That's a local workaround that's legal and within the context. Let's be honest, there's a lot of things that just aren't consistent in this. Okay? We didn't arrest anybody that protested Sunday, and that's fine. That's because that's their First Amendment. But we're telling churches what to do, and we're violating the Second Amendment, frankly. And that's already been proven in court cases. Delegate Parrott wasn't completely off. I don't believe we should sue the governor. That's just me. But there are constitutional questions here. And that's where you all, as we have sworn to uphold the federal Constitution and the state of Maryland Constitution. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus here. I'm trying to say we're in this together, but ultimately, sadly, it falls on you. Somebody's got to step up here and make local decisions when questions come. That falls to you. Are there workarounds at the mall that could work? They might be. Clearly, the sports camp, I believe, is clearly something that can be done and is happening across the state. There are different interpretations by local health boards across the state, too. It's not consistent. Just as the federal guidelines across our states are very different. Pennsylvania, in some places, you can have 250 people. It's up to you to interpret with the tools that you have before you how this is supposed to be implemented and worked. Once again, I want to yield to Delegate Quarterman. I understand the discouragement, but I believe he has a right to finish.
That's fine, and I appreciate that. And you know, Commissioner Wagner, I appreciate those comments, and I agree that, you know, going forward, we should work together more.
And
Okay.
I didn't, when I said stay off social media, you do answer a lot of citizens' questions, so I commend you for that, but it's just the negativity that,
And I think part of that is born out of frustration, and I think we're all frustrated, and I appreciate those comments, but I think what we're frustrated about is what the senator has also alluded to, as far as I think what all of our concern here is, how do we get Washington County open, okay? And obviously, I think as Commissioner Klein, President Klein here said as well, I think a more concentrated, collaborative effort going forward will be in the best interest of everybody. So I do appreciate those comments, okay? You know, the governor, or excuse me, the senator has already alluded to some things here locally that we can work with the sports camps and things of that nature, because I know that's a big concern with a lot of our youth leagues right now. I did not check today, so I apologize, but I know over the weekend, the county's site was kind of interpreting, you know, non-contact sports, while then the governor's website was promoting limited low-contact practices. So some interpretation there I think that could be given here locally to help out some of those entities. So, you know, again, I would just ask for more involvement, you know, with everybody collectively and collaboratively. I think that's in everyone's best interest. I know that from the onset that we have not been involved in a lot of those conversations. We're involved in, there's a weekly update call that I know many of you guys are on with some of the municipalities that I've been on, and I appreciate all the input there. But I think going forward, it would be definitely, I think, in everyone's best interest to be able to work more collaboratively. So again, I appreciate the time you guys have allowed us here today. I appreciate everything you guys are doing, because as Senator Serafini said, I know it's not an easy position. It's not an easy position for any of us. So I appreciate you know, your time, and thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. They're well received. Any comments from the commissioners?
Thank you for coming, and, you know, I know down in Mako, you guys, everybody in the delegation, while I'm down there, has been very supportive in setting up meetings for me, getting contacts for interest for Washington County for our bills and stuff like that. And you've always been responsive for my emails and calls, so just wanted to say thank you for everything that you guys do.
Just a few things. Again, I've reached out to both of you about some issues. I've reached out to 5 of our 6 members of the delegation, trying to spread those questions around so I don't bombard just one of you each time. And I've done the same thing with our school board members. As I get a question that pertains to a school, a parent question, that's not what I'm elected to do. Just like I reach out with the state issues to you, I reach out to the school board issues with our school board. And everyone I've reached out to has been just so helpful. And I've been able to get an answer. It may not be the answer the citizen necessarily wants, but an answer to the citizen right away. So thank you for that. We probably should have had a conversation. This should not have been our first joint meeting together. I think we should have had a conversation like this a lot sooner. I don't think it's unreasonable at all, and I don't think you think it's unreasonable of us to think that as state-level leaders, you are of higher elected position than what we are. You are a little closer to the governor than what we are. So we do need your help often when it comes to state issues, whether it's the downtown UIP project or issues dealing with the coronavirus and state interpretation even. I think we need your help with that, because you can't interpret 50% capacity in a place of business. You can't really interpret 6 feet social distancing. Maybe there are some things you can't interpret, but some things can't be interpreted, so our hands are tied. But thank you for coming here. Hopefully we have more conversations together.
Any other comments? Gentlemen, thank you. Come back soon. All right, next on the agenda will be commissioners' reports and comments. We are running a little behind. Commissioners, any? Commissioner Baker?
I have nothing to report today.
Commissioner Kiefer?
Just one thing, you often turn on the news and see lots of negativity. I was really excited to see a positive story on the front page of yesterday's Herald Mail, recognizing Mrs. Ruby Staley as Maryland's oldest resident at 112 years of age. I had the pleasure of joining her for her 110th and 111th birthday. Obviously, this year with restrictions with COVID in nursing homes, can't have that kind of a celebration, but oldest resident in Maryland lives here in Washington County, Mrs. Ruby Staley, 112. Happy birthday.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Got a couple comments. First, would like to congratulate the town of Hancock for the governor announcing that they are now the trail capital of Maryland. Myself and Commissioner Klein were there. It was quite an exciting day, and seeing everybody out on the trails, on the bikes and everything. Hancock was booming on Saturday, so that was nice. Would like to congratulate our Parks and Rec Department for opening the pool this Monday. I heard they had about 80 people. We're having difficulty finding lifeguards. The capacity limit there until we get everybody is going to be about 100 people inside of Halfway's pool. So it's exciting there. I would like to thank the delegation center and Senator Serafini, Delegate Corman. One thing I'd like to talk about today, and I don't know if it's now or if we want to talk about it later in the agenda, but there is a softball tournament coming up this weekend in Washington County. It is through 3 different softball fields. It's going to be could be up to 500 hotel rooms, and they're looking for clarification. I've read through the executive order, and I have it highlighted if you want, and I've read through the sports program. There's nothing in there specific that says that we cannot do it. It says that we have to abide by social guidelines and gatherings of 10 or 10 or less. If we can put 150 people into Halfway pool with the social distance, we can do camps.
Isn't it 100 to Halfway?
150 people are allowed. We only have the guards to do 100 people. Until we can get more people, we're keeping it at 100 because we don't have
What's
the
the organization sponsoring this softball? Is it PA softball or?
I do not know the name of the organization. I know our Convention and Visitor Bureau reached out, and it's.
I'm hearing, pardon the interruption, that group, that organization won't come into Maryland unless they abide by the governor's executive order. So you're asking us to interpret the governor's executive order to.
Well, I'm not asking us to interpret anything. If you look at the rules, it specifically states right on there that we have the authority. Yeah, so it specifically states political subdivisions are not prohibited from opening outdoor public spaces to the general public, such as parks, sports fields, and courts, beaches, dog parks, et cetera, et cetera. And then it does say, after the consultation with the health officer for the county, the local health officer may issue directives, and then it says applicable to social distancing guidelines. So we have all of this. We can do this. And then if you go look at this youth sports, again, it does not specifically state anything in there that we cannot do it. It actually talks about local guidance. And this is one of the specific things that we have the directives to do this. There's nothing in here saying that we cannot doing. It's telling us how we have to do it. If we have to have groups of 10 and they have to be spread across, that's the exact same thing that we're being authorized to do with the camps. Camps are allowed to have a lot of people, but they can have no groups of 10. The pool, I'm allowed to have 150 people inside of that fence under guidelines, but I can't have 100 people around 500 people around 5 different baseball fields, softball fields. We can do this under our rules. And everybody 2 weeks ago and 4 weeks ago said we're willing to do things if there's a way for us to do this. Here's a way for us to do this, abiding by the rules. We're not discounting any rule. We're not jumping over any fence, but we have to give authorization. And
So when's the tournament again?
this weekend. And they said if they don't have information that they can do it, they're by tomorrow, I think 5 o'clock, that they're going to stop it. And there's 500 rooms in Washington County over the weekend, hotels, could be. And then there's all the restaurants and all the gatherings.
Ultimatum is they need to know by tomorrow at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. And all we have to do is say they can do it, because in this guidance,
We get the information that they needed that they had the ultimatum set up at 5 p.m.
I think they talked about this last week on the Wednesday call, and then I asked specifically yesterday. So last week on Wednesday, we were on a call that they said that.
Have you run that by Kurt?
I've been running this by everybody for probably 3 weeks.
Does that include Kurt?
Yes, he was on the call. I sent Kirk a specific text
Have time
message
to
about it.
review it. Mr. Stoner?
Guidance I received from the state compliance officer, you cannot play games. What the county does is what the county does, I guess, but the guidance that I received from the state compliance officer was that games. Can you hear me? The guidance that I've received from the state compliance officer was that game practices and skill building were fine to do, that games were still not allowed to be played.
Was there a meeting this morning or something where this softball organization wouldn't come here anyway? Or was anybody in on?
I don't know. I haven't had
business
any
meeting or
discussions with them.
That's correct. The Convention and Visitors Bureau advised this morning that they did not
When you
believe
say,
that
you mean Dan Spedden? Is that who you're? Yeah,
yes, sir.
CVB. Okay, gotcha.
that they would not come if it went against the governor's executive order.
And again, there's nothing in here that specifically in the governor's executive order that says they cannot do it. There's nothing in here. And it even says other businesses, except as otherwise closed by this order or any other order of the governing of the state of Maryland effective 5 p.m. on June 5th, business organizations, establishments, facilities that are not part of the critical infrastructure sectors identified by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, currently described under the website, may open to the general public.
I
It
understand.
says that we can.
And I want them to play ball. I'm on board, but they say they won't come and violate the governor's executive order.
It's
That's where I'm getting
because
confused.
my interpretation of the governor's executive order, it does not specifically state anything that they cannot do. And just as we've heard from our delegation, if it does not specifically say, and there is a gray area, we have the authority to allow them to do that. It does not specifically say, and it says other businesses may open. A softball league is a business.
So, Mr. Stoner, you reached out to the top state officials, and they also interpret the governor's orders.
Mullen? Yes, I reached out to the state compliance officer who,
And they follow the governor's orders.
correct. Which as health officer, I'm obliged and responsible for following. It goes back to the no large gatherings.
Again, the no large gathering says,
Maybe we just have to get a hold of somebody at the governor's office
and
find out what you're saying. Are we able to have the softball game?
And that's what I've recommended. I sent everybody a letter last week that we can say that we're going to do these certain things and put a negative consent or an implied consent on it so that he has the ability to say we cannot do this if directly stating. But the 10-person gathering,
Court, I understand all of that.
no, hold on. The 10-person gathering, we can already do the 10-person gathering.
So
You
the
put 10
ripple
people
effect
here,
is every
6
little league, girls softball league will be able to follow suit. Are we ready to make that decision? And it doesn't follow the governor's executive order? Is there going to be, the commissioners have responsibility and liability for our issues? So,
My answer is yes, because there is gray area in there. And yes, they cannot have groups of 10 people or more, but just like at a pool or just like at a camp, they can have a group of 10 people here, 6 feet away, they can have a group of another 10 people. Just like at a restaurant, if I have an outdoor seating of 40 people, but there are groups of 6 feet apart, that is just fine.
All right, well, I guess here's the thing. Legally, the county has declared a local state of emergency. That state of emergency did not shut down any businesses. So we did not shut down any businesses. The business closures that have occurred have been as a result of the governor's executive order and the proclamation of the catastrophic health emergency. So when we talk about allowing something in contravention of the governor's order, I think that is our opinion, but I think it is of no legal force or effect. And if the compliance officer at the Office of the State Police has opined that these games are not allowed, even if we say that's fine, have at it, if they get a complaint and the state police goes out there, they're going to rely on their compliance officer's interpretation that the executive order prohibits those types of activities, regardless of what the county commissioner's opinion may be as to the propriety of that interpretation. I mean, it's a little bit of the principle that water can't rise higher than its source. And in this source, the closure and the interpretation of the order is coming from the executive who proclaimed the order.
But just like we've heard with the delegation telling us right now that the governor's telling us that we do have the control. And so if we don't have the direct guidance in the executive order, then they're telling us that we have the authority.
Wait, honestly, I think this is a perfect time for this conversation to take place. I think that shows the fallacy in what the senator and the delegate told us, where we have the local authority. We want to make that authority, but it sounds like from what our health officer and outreach to the state officials that we don't have that authority. So I think that puts us in a serious situation where, no, we don't have the authority that they think we have. I'm sorry, that's how I see it. They've just confirmed it. I will not call and say that there's a softball game being played and turn them into the health department. I'm not going to do that. I don't care if they play, to be honest. You know, I think there's been a lot more overreach than what is constitutionally allowed, than what's, you know, even reasonable. And, you know, it's so frustrating to hear these press conferences on Wednesdays and clarifications on Thursdays. That's what happens. I don't see where we have the authority.
Just the majority of these games, where are they being played at, in a city or county?
They're at Halfway Park, at Fairgrounds Park, and I think it's
So why don't the mayor
Hinesville,
and council just say play ball?
because it's at more than one field. And
They're a charter, but they're a charter government. They could reduce the competition down better.
But-
So why doesn't the mayor and the council say play on our fields?
well, they could say play on their fields, but they still have the other county fields that, you know.
Reduce the size of their tournament.
Okay, I mean,
I'm still sort of hung up on the fact that would this organization even put any weight in what we say when they say they're not playing and violating the executive order?
because it's not violating the executive order. It might be violating an
Would they interpret it that way?
No, but when was that interpreted? When did you ask about that?
We've asked several times over the past couple of weeks, ever
I-
since youth sports was able to start.
What about adult sports?
We just asked for sports in general. I can only speak for myself, but Tom and I we asked for sports in general.
Can I see that guidance?
Most of it's actually been verbal.
Well, I would like
But-
to see an email guidance of that.
Okay, we will get it today then.
Yeah, it's actually on the state website
On this, yeah.
from MDH.
Okay, commissioners, any decision or just?
Well, both Tom and Earl are present here today. I'd just like to tell you, I've had individuals throughout the state and the community come up to me and just talked about the tremendous and the humans job that you two are doing for Washington County, and that they would verbatim, they would put you two up against anybody in the state of Maryland at the same positions that you two have. So I just wanted to thank you for everything that you're doing for Washington County, and I just think you guys are awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You know, I have to say that every phone call, every time I bugged you, he picked up a phone call in the middle of dinner the other night to answer a call or to respond to people. So I have to applaud you for that responsiveness to us. So I thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
I tend to agree with what Wayne said. I think he sort of hit it right on the nose. I mean, it's a tough situation. I want everybody open. And I can see the traffic's picked up since the last press conference by Governor Hogan, and I hear he's going to have another one this week. I mean, people are doing it, and frankly, I don't care if they play softball. That's their decision. I don't want it to be my decision today. I want to see what the governor says tomorrow or Thursday. And Court and I have talked on the phone about it, and it's that negative response letter. I can't get on board, and I'll tell you why. You're basically asking the governor, said, we're going to play ball, or we're going to do this, and if you tell us we can't, then it's good to go. The governor's not going to answer us. That means we can't draw a line and stand and not cross it. It's sort of be like me writing a letter to Sheriff Mullendore and saying, I'm going to drive 100 mile an hour on Malvins Avenue tomorrow. Well, he's going to say, oh, I'm not answering that. But he's already said you can't do it, and that's what I'm hung up on. The governor, per what I'm hearing legally and emergency management and health, is he's already said we can't. You know, and that's where I'm hung up. I mean, this is a tough one for me.
No, I understand what I'm not saying. Anything that is said specifically can. I'm not asking for anything on the restaurants. I'm not asking anything for malls. I'm not anything that's specifically designed in that order. But any of those other things, there was a pod company, a flotation something, that other counties, they opened up and they said it was fine, but they were told they can't open in Washington County. So that was our interpretation of it. So how come we have a company in Washington County that the exact same companies are opening it up in other counties, but we can't open in Washington County, but they were told they can open up in other counties? So those are things, again, you guys probably asked.
That wasn't a local decision.
Well, other local counties said that that was fine. Yes, you might have went up and asked the state, and the state said no, but other counties said it was fine, and nobody got penalized, nobody got in trouble. I understand it was not a local decision. We went up and asked the state, because I saw the email chain. So we did go ask the state, and the state said no. But other counties said it was fine, and nothing's happened to those counties.
So that's just, and I'm not getting it, because I'm for bringing the softball tournaments here as well. All we have to do is get clarification between now and 5 p.m. If someone way higher than us says it's okay to have those tournaments, then I'm in support of those tournaments. So I guess, I don't know if somebody out of the group here can get together and send the information to someone at the high up level and get back to us and say it's fine to host the tournaments, and then we go at it.
Within social guidelines, I'm not saying you have a crowd of 200 people.
Well,
gathered up.
again, just have somebody that has authority that can say it's okay, then that's what we should be working on, trying to find somebody that can make a decision and get the correct decision back to us.
Okay, I want to bring the comments to a close, but Randy, I need.
I'm good. I've talked enough.
Okay, and I'm okay too, for the sake of time. I've had enough comments. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Next up, rescind bid award, PUR 1464. Pardon me, excuse me, county staff, I forgot. Thank you for the reminder. Please come forward, introduce the matter, and make sure you wipe your area. Thank you for the reminder. I was looking at the clock. Josh, good morning.
Joshua O'Neill, Director of Information Systems. I'm coming to you for consensus today on behalf of the Public Relations Department. There's a desire to replace the AV system that runs most of the equipment in this room, boardroom, hallway TVs, due to problems and complications we've had with it. It's also getting close to the end of its life, and parts of it were salvaged from the old second floor meeting room. The amount for the replacement is $43,347.03, and that funding would be taken from money remaining in the county administrator office's budget. And I'm just looking for consensus for that.
Commissioners, comments, consensus?
Coming out of the budget, I'm fine.
So we're taking it out of the the current 2020 budget
Yes.
and taking out of the operational budget.
Yeah.
So was that money, is Sarah here? So was that money, that $43,000 being utilized in any other way to, first one, offset the loss of revenue that we have?
Yes, you're correct. Any unused or unexpended funds at the end of fiscal year 2020 will offset any loss that the county has. And so while we do have budgetary savings because of the vacancies, that is something to consider when you make this decision.
What does our end of year budget look like at this point, since we're down to 30 days?
We are. We will receive income tax distributions in June, July, and August. We did receive our May distribution. It came in as expected, so that was good. That was for January, February, and March, and so we did not expect to see a large variance with that one. So that is why it came in as expected.
It's the next distribution.
It is, the next distributions are the ones that are going to be more volatile because they'll include April, May, and June, and we get those June, July, and August. And so our preliminary estimates were about 1.5 million deficit for the year. Without additional information, that's where we stand today.
What's the need for this technology upgrade? Could you?
Well, Danielle should be listening in the back, and she can speak to the problems we've had with this system. It's gotten to the point where parts of it need to be restarted every meeting day in order to get things up and running.
Is there any kind of warranty on the software or the hardware that was? Because this is relatively new.
It's
2017 is when we opened this office.
Well, that's true, but the equipment was bought at the beginning of the process for renovation and warehoused for that time by the contractor. And I believe that the original contractor that was handling the AV install even went out of business during the process, and a different one came in and had to install that equipment. And like I said, some of it was salvaged from the old second floor room, so it's not that new. Another point to make is also the current system doesn't have any integration for any video conferencing or remote participation, and that's something we would have on the replacement.
Is this something we put out to bid?
It's below the
It's all
threshold
50,000.
required for bidding.
That's not budgeted. It would be a controllable asset.
Probably every other meeting, I'm getting an email from our PR team in the media room saying that it's shut down, there's no live streaming, and that they've had to reboot, and then she posts my audio. So it's
And another consideration to make is anytime we need to make a change to this system, its control of this system is held by a third-party contractor, and that costs us a minimum of $700 if you have to do so much as change the time on something.
And you'll often see Danielle out here with her phone, and then she's streaming because the system went down.
Okay, Commissioners' thoughts, comments, consensus? Is it a vote or consensus we need? Or consensus? I'm all right with it. That's
I'm all
one.
right.
I'm fine with that. I would just like to see what we're buying for $43,000.
Okay, I can supply you with a list of the equipment.
That'd be perfect.
Josh, you do expect delivery by 6:30, right?
Yes. It's gonna be tight, but I think.
Commissioners, everybody okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next staff report. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. I just have a brief staff comment today, this morning. I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing. He has just obtained his bachelor's degree. He has been working on this for 9 years. And I know as well as anyone that putting in a hard day at work and then going home on your own time, trying to pursue your educational goals in the evenings and on the weekends, it takes a lot of commitment and perseverance. And, often I hear him encouraging his own staff to pursue their goals. And so he's leading by example. And so I just thought it was really important to take a moment to recognize him and to congratulate him. So congratulations, Rick, and thank you for
Congratulations,
everything
Rick.
you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to say that without the support of this board and the previous board, this would not have been possible. I just wish and hope that the county will always keep the tuition reimbursement program in place. That is a carrot for employees to reach and try to obtain.
Rick, I've been working on it for 69 years and I ain't got there yet. You did good. 9 years isn't bad.
Yeah, I got my eye on the other one next, so we'll.
Where did
see
you
what happens.
graduate from, Rick?
Frostburg.
Yep, he's worked very hard.
Frostburg.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time,
Thank you.
commissioners.
Congratulations. Any other staff reports, please come forward. Thank you again, Sarah.
Susan Small, Director of Business Development. I just am here to give you a brief update of our Rise Up grant program that we started last Monday. I think today's Monday, Tuesday, right? It's been a long 10 days for my staff and the staff at the city of Hagerstown who are also helping us. Everyone has really dedicated their time to this program. And just to give you a sense of where we are, a little over 1 week in, we've received 320 applications as of 9 o'clock this morning, and they continue to trickle in at this point. We have about $3 million or just over requested funding for those grants, and we've awarded about 40 as of Friday afternoon. Today, we have about 80 more or so to hand out, and I suspect by the close of today, we'll have another 60 or 70 in purchasing's inbox. So thank you to purchasing. I don't know if they're here anymore, but they've done a fabulous job getting these through the process as well as Sarah's staff and budget and finance. Everybody's just been really helpful to get them through. So I just want to make a kind of note, if anyone this is kind of for both you all sitting here, as well as staff, as well as any of our partner organizations, and then public and citizens, businesses alike. If you're interested in applying for this grant, please encourage people to do so, and their businesses really, really can utilize the money. My staff is here to help and answer questions. We've, answered things up through the evenings and weekends just to try and make it simple and quick and easy for these businesses to take advantage of this, because we know that they're struggling. And we're in this together with them. So we're going to continue to accept applications through Monday the 15th at midnight, and with the commissioners' kind of permission, I'd like to maybe think about extending that another to the end of the month.
Did you say we had 13 million, right? Does that sound about right?
We have 8.96 million dedicated to this program.
8.9. And you've used 3. You expect that you'll run out of money with the applicants you have already?
No, I don't project that by the 15th.
And if you don't use all the money, where does it go?
I'd like to continue the program for a little bit longer.
You'd like to use all the money, obviously, for the businesses. Yeah.
I mean, they have to utilize the funds by the end of the year, so there's no reason why we can't help them continue this application process. So
I'd be fine with
I've
that.
got a quick question on this.
sure.
We have 8.9 million. There are 10,000 grants. If we look at that, do we have enough businesses in Washington County that are under that $5 million range that are all going to get it out?
I mean, we do have enough businesses. I think that there's been a little bit of, I guess, pause because people had some complications with some of the other federal or local, or not local, but state programs, or just they were maybe a little afraid to apply for this, thinking it was a little complicated, but it's really not. It's not at all. And
Concerns about the amount of information being required.
Yeah.
But the county didn't set those qualifiers. That came with
no,
the
and the
program, is that
reason,
correct?
right, no, we did not. And the reason we did all of the information up front was so we don't have to do it on the back end, to make it even easier for them. It's a one and done thing. They apply with that information, and then we've got it. So, and if there's questions along the way, we have staff dedicated to reach out to them with a phone call to say, hey, you're missing this, can I help you find it or get it, or here's what we can use. So,
Susan, do you think, first of all, thank you. Last Monday, I think by 10 o'clock, last Monday when the program opened, I had like 4 businesses reach out to me, and I just called you and bang, 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 bang. Those 4 questions you answered for me, and you helped out all those businesses, I believe. As Commissioner Monishment said, a lot of money hasn't been used yet. Do you think it might be worthwhile reaching out to some of our local banks, all of the local banks? And I'm sure they've run into commercial customers who maybe applied for the PPP money that maybe didn't qualify but would qualify for this. They could be another outlet just to get that outreach out and get it.
Absolutely.
Didn't the chamber reach out to every one of their 600 members?
I was on a call with our stakeholders this morning and asked all of the membership organizations to please reach out to their members one more time, and or not one more time, as many times as you want, to please encourage them to apply. And then I know that my staff and the city staff is also going to start making personal phone calls just to our own contacts. We've worked with PR and marketing to do a number of press releases and announcements on Facebook. I know that the Herald Mail has done a couple of interviews with us, and we'll encourage that, because I think we need to make it clear
I appreciate that outreach. The reason I was thinking of banks probably know the needs of their customers,
their clients,
more than some other groups may, just because that's what they do.
Yep.
Susan, you're asking us maybe to extend it a week today, or what?
I would just like to see where we stand at the end of this, application period, and maybe next Tuesday we can make an announcement if we want to extend it, if that's okay.
That's fine, I'm okay with
To
that.
the end of the month or something.
I mean, I'm all for it. Is there any federal deadline on when the money has to be given out?
Not given out, just utilized by the end of the year.
So we could extend this in theory till November, as
Till
long
it's
as
gone.
they paid it by
Yeah.
outstanding. I just want to make sure that, if it's getting out or being utilized as much as possible.
Yeah, and we have the process in place, and it's working pretty well, so I want to, encourage people to continue to apply. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great information, Susan.
Yep,
Thank you.
thank
Susan, one
you.
more question, if I can. The senator had mentioned money through the CARES Act for the hospital, Meritus. Is that not part of this program? Can you speak to that?
Not, that's actually Earl's side of the house on this one.
Okay.
So I would defer to the health department for the health cares portion.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan.
Yep, thank you.
Any other staff wishing to report?
Earl's willing to speak. Would we mind if Earl spoke about?
Sure, come on up. Yeah, thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
That would come out of $13 million of CARES money that's set for direct public health activities. We actually have a meeting scheduled for Thursday to begin discussions on that.
Okay.
But it's for anything directly related to,
But it's not forgotten. It's,
oh, no. It should be out within the next 2 weeks, I would say.
and one of the big things at Meredith, why they lost money, was elective surgery was canceled, correct? So there was some of their income lost. So,
So even things such as all the PPE that's purchased and those sorts of things can be paid for out of this money.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other staff? If not, we'll,
I've got one item.
please do.
Ajay Gupta, on behalf of the Health Solutions Research, Inc., is asking for a letter of support for a grant application that they are submitting to the State Opioid Operations Center. It is a grant for a research program that would provide mapping of drug disposal locations and where they're being used and are being most effective by aggregating anonymous cell phone data.
He sent us another email last night with a description.
Yep, my question was, any match from the county involved?
He's just asking for a letter saying we support.
And it's specific,
How long's the grant? Is it for multiple years?
Yeah, I think their spend plan had most of it in the next year. It was about for 95,000 or so.
And they won't be coming to we don't know if it's a renewable grant or not, but they won't be coming to the county and asking them for financial assistance.
No, they won't.
Commissioners, you okay for signing on to their letter of support? Again, it's drug disposal is what it's specifically stating. Okay, there's 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you, gentlemen. Kurt,
Thank you.
All right, proceeding with our agenda. Kristen, anything for you? No, sir. All righty. I did one thing that Chris and I have been talking about, getting our committees up and running and with social distancing and things like that so they can begin their reorganization with the guidance that they need.
Commissioner,
Next.
with that, did we find out if the environmental committee set their chair and co-chair yet?
I haven't made my nomination yet either.
Yeah, they have not, okay.
I'm waiting to get a reply.
Are we to submit our nominations to Krista?
I think we said to Jeremy, didn't we, or something, Terry, you suggested? Either way, I'm waiting on a call back.
I just didn't know if
I thought Jeremy.
I didn't know if they set their chair and co-chair.
Either way, it's fine with me. As long as we get them. All right, thank you. All right, I'd like to, no other staff comments. I'd like to proceed with an agenda item, rescind bid award, PUR 1464, Brandy Noggle, George Spicer. Randy, please introduce yourself in the matter.
Brandy Novel, buyer for the purchasing department. And good morning, everyone. The recommendation I have for you this morning is for the rescind of bid award PUR 1464 grounds maintenance chemicals. We move to relieve Cinetech Solutions out of Soudertown, PA from the bid without prejudice for item number 31, signature XTRA, and award it to the next lowest responsible bidder via a drawing of lots today, and that is pursuant with 2.9 of the Washington County Procurement Manual. We did accept bids for this on April the 29th of this year. It was posted on eMaryland Marketplace, our county website, and in the local newspaper. 15 companies download the document, and we did receive 5 bids. You voted to award this on May 12th of this year, but the vendor did decide that they could not provide the product at this price. So therefore, by drawing of lots today, if I may have someone draw, we want to award to the next lowest, and it was tie all around. So, Court, can I get you to draw for me?
Sure.
Nutrient Ag Solutions out of Rosedale, Maryland was drawn for
Would
this.
you repeat that one?
I'm sorry?
Repeat that,
Sure.
please.
Nutrient Ag Solutions out of Rosedale, Maryland So today I asked for the relief of Cenatex bid and to award to Nutrient Ag Solutions.
Commissioners, support? Good. 5 nods.
We need to make a motion.
You need motion votes for that?
Yes,
Okay.
for both of them. Mhm.
Make the motion to approve nutrient
Ag Solutions.
ag solutions.
That's,
I'll second it.
okay, first, second, any discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next on our agenda, 2020 housing bond allocation. Jill Baker, please come forward. If you need to wipe the area, please do, and introduce yourself in the matter.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Before you, my name is Jill Baker. I'm the Director of Planning and Zoning. Before you today is the annual request from the Maryland Department of Community Development to transfer our 2020 bond allocation that the county receives each year. They invite us to return the bond to them so that they can pool the money in issuing bonds for the fund housing programs. We've been participating in this program for many, many years. We started in 2007 to send the bonds back to the state where they process for the Maryland Mortgage Program and many other housing programs across the state. So what we're asking for today is a motion to approve the transfer of Washington County's 2020 housing bond allocation in the amount of $5,546,531 to the Community Development Administration for use in issuing housing bonds on behalf of Washington County.
I just had one real quick question. At the very end, it says targeted areas in Washington County are within Hagerstown city limits. Are there any outside of it, or is that the only?
Not at this point, no.
Commissioners, thoughts? There's a recommended motion.
Could you elaborate on that a little more?
On the targeted areas? Basically, the targeted areas are set by the state in terms of the many different barriers to housing, including low income, English speaking, and vehicles, how many vehicles you own. So it goes off the matrix basically from census data that's collected and where those areas are the most need for people in terms of housing stock and who needs it and where they can get the most bang for their buck, more or less.
So by keeping and this is something we vote on regularly.
Mm-hmm.
By moving forward with the recommended motion, we're limiting the housing bonds to only be available for use in the city of Hagerstown?
No. They are available throughout the county. They just have different limitations on income limits and amount of housing purchase, depending upon whether you're in the targeted area or outside the targeted area. If you're inside the target area, there's a lower income threshold and a higher buying power versus outside of those areas.
Is there ways that at some point we can look at talking to whoever's creating these targeted areas to expanding that? Because I know there's definitely other places in the county that could be useful just as much.
Absolutely. I can have that conversation with the department head and see what we can do.
Awesome, thank you. But with that, I make the motion to approve the transfer to Washington County's 2020 housing bond allocation in the amount of $5,546,531.
I have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
First and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next up, Black Rock Agricultural Lease. Please come forward and introduce the subject. Be sure to wipe your area. Thank you for being here today.
All
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Todd Moser, Real Property Administrator, here with Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works. Move to approve the request to proceed with the request for quotation for the rental tract of land adjacent to Black Rock Golf Course and Landis Road, and enter into an agricultural lease with the highest bidder meeting the minimum bid amount. The agenda item was initially presented to the board on June 2nd, 2020, and at this meeting, the board requested the item to be placed on the next agenda for consideration. The existing 5-year lease with the current tenant is set to expire at the end of October 2020. The county has approximately 46.25 acres of tillable land available for agricultural use. The proposed lease is for the term of 5 years and allows either party to terminate the lease with 60 days written notice. Language regarding proposed future walking trails has been added to the lease that will allow the county to construct trails in the future. If the county terminates the lease, the tenant will have 60 days to harvest crops. If the crops are not deemed ready to harvest, the county will pay the tenant the current local USDA rate for existing crops the tenant was prevented from harvesting. Setting a $3,500 minimum bid amount is proposed. The alternatives negotiate new lease with the current tenant.
This is the same exact thing you brought us last time, right?
I did, except I added the $3,500 minimum bid.
$3,500?
Yeah.
So you're still proposing the existing tenant to,
I'm bringing this to you to get clarification. Moving forward, are we to put these out for bid? And where this started was 2 years ago, we had purchased land, Sharpsburg Pike, for the public training center. There was a farmer that had farmed that land for 50, 75 years, he and his family. When we purchased it, the board had asked that we put that tract of land out for bid. That's what we did.
I guess I'm going back on my recollection, but I thought we were okay with letting the existing farmer farm the property. I didn't know, I can't remember that we said put it.
And I got brought in the middle of that, but
It went out to bid.
it did definitely go out. We were directed, we brought it to open session, we were directed to put it out for bid. Now, I'm not sure what happened prior to that, if the farmer no longer had interest.
My recollection is the farmer that farmed it at that time was to continue farming.
He did not. We were.
It did go out to bid.
It did go out to bid.
so is that farmer there now, or is there a new farmer there? You don't know?
Creekbound Farms.
Yep.
Creekbound Farms was the highest bidder.
You know, we have I know I'm all about bidding, give everybody, but this guy's been in there, what, 5 years? 10 years?
5 years. And I will say, when we put it out for bid, the Sharpsburg Pike, the first bid we put out, we had zero bidders.
We have a good tenant. Good tenants are hard to come by. He pays, he keeps things great, he agrees to everything. I guess I'd be fine with renewing his lease.
I thought there was a commissioner last week, this came before us last week, asking for a courtesy to have a week to think about it. I didn't know we were putting it out to bid.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Terry asked for a week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if the guy's doing an awesome job out there farming it, and this contract, June 2nd, hopefully there's already crops and all planted on it.
There's
So-
wheat currently.
So if we put it out for bid, what happens to the,
No, this was just, his lease, his 5-year lease expires at the end of October.
okay.
So in order to get the
I see.
process,
Okay, I understand.
it does take several months to.
And as a courtesy,
I'm
because he
already
would want to
saying
know
that.
if he's going to plant another crop, how long it would take to plant and harvest and all that.
I'd offer. to
And if
review the lease
anything,
with him.
if there's complaints, something's not being done right by the farmer, we're going to hear that, and then we can make a decision then to put it out for
Yeah, there have been no issues with this tenant.
bid.
You want to approve just letting this gentleman renew the lease today? Is there a motion to do that?
Motion to approve the renewal of the lease.
Second by Terry. All in favor, say aye.
Can I add a quick, so we don't get into this problem again, can we put that it can automatic renew unless there's a complaint, so that we don't have to get back into this again and again and again?
How many properties do we rent out like this?
I've treated the airport property separate. There's other guidelines with FAA. This is the only property outside of the airport zoning that I'm aware of.
I agree with court, automatic renew unless we hear complaints.
There you go. I have a first and a second on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And Mr. Reichman, did you enjoy the sun yesterday?
Oh, of course.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
get a photo there.
No,
It was,
I-
it was
I
great
heard
to
you were
see
there
the
now.
pool open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for your efforts on that yesterday, by the way.
So hopefully people can enjoy that.
Thank you.
I heard all you guys were out there in force yesterday.
And make sure everything was running smooth.
Oh, everybody was there,
Got it
yeah.
under control, yeah.
It went pretty good, I heard.
You're looking for anyone
Yeah, I
to
have to
teach,
thank-
I'm sorry.
Thanks staff for pulling that together. Was, relatively short notice. We're kind of in a holding pattern, finding out if a lot of these things could be offered. So as Court mentioned, we're still looking for lifeguards. So we're okay to operate, but obviously if, capacity increases and that sort of thing, and if we ever get to taking vacations, we would like to have some additional staff.
For heat rotation, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're looking for anyone to teach swim classes, I think in addition to Court's parents, see Jamie Dick. I know in the winter months, he swims in the Potomac River upstream.
Yeah, Jamie's an accomplished swimmer. I heard he swam actually Olympics.
That's a good rumor to get started, yeah.
We threatened to throw him in last year, Terry, when I was out there, and he can't, I don't think.
Boy, he swims in the Potomac River in January, upstream. Dodges ice and everything else.
All right, thank you. Next up, Agricultural Land Preservation District applications, Chris Boggs. Please introduce yourself to the matter and. Thank you.
Chris Boggs, Land Preservation Planner. Last week, Department of Planning and Zoning, last week we had the public hearing for this year's petitions for the agricultural land preservation districts. Just a quick rundown, that's our tax credit program for agricultural land. And every year we bring the same thing to the commissioners. Of course, this year's a little different because, social distancing. So the idea was to give it a week after the public hearing to hear any public comment. I have heard nothing but support, no negative comments or anything opposing the petition. So what next?
For the record, I'd ask the county clerk if she's received any public comments.
Thank you. Okay.
Record is now closed. The commissioners can act on the.
So you're looking for a motion to approve the.
And you're.
Correct, yes, the recommended motion to approve the 2020 10-year agricultural land preservation districts.
I motion to approve the 2020 10-year land preservation.
Do I have a second?
Second, and do you also want the 5-year renewals? It says.
Yes, correct, you're right, yes, the 5 renewals as well.
For the 4 additional properties.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 I vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, Board of Health Officers, Governor Executive Order, Kirk Downey, Earl, Tom. Please introduce the matter and yourself.
Are you bringing your state representative down for this, or?
Tom?
Not right now.
Okay.
Okay, please begin. Introduce yourself and Kirk, whoever wants to lead.
Earl Stoner, Health Officer, Health Department.
Tom Brown, Emergency Manager for Washington County.
Commissioners, as you know, there's been an ongoing discussion as to what the governor's executive order means and who has the authority to enforce it or modify it or interpret it. You've asked for some additional direction concerning what it means for the local governing body or the commissioners to act as a Board of Health. So this is an attempt to provide some guideline or an outline as to where we are legally and how the emergency operations, emergency management works in the state of Maryland, given the applicable statutory guidelines. Obviously, the governor relied on the authority contained in the public safety article, Title 14, to promulgate the executive order. And there's a specific provision in that that allows him to order the evacuation, closing, or decontamination of any facility, and also provides him authority to order individuals to remain indoors or refrain from congregating. Those powers are premised on the proclamation of a catastrophic health emergency and are renewable in 30-day increments. And of course, they have been renewed throughout the promulgation of the emergency. The public safety article does not mention any local exceptions. It does provide for the declaration of a local state of emergency, which activates the response and recovery aspects of the local emergency plan and authorizes a provision of aid and assistance under the plan. The Health General article establishes the local governing body as the County Board of Health. So each county has the local governing body serving in dual roles as the County Board of Health. The Board of Health has certain oversight over local health conditions, including some fee-setting authorities and some coordinating responsibilities with the State Department of Health. The health officer, as you know, is hired and serves at the pleasure of both the County Board of Health, as well as the State Secretary of Health. There are additional statutory provisions that appears that the Board of Health can adopt local rules that are to address regulation, to address or regulate nuisances or cause of disease in the county. Looking at the statutory scheme as a whole, it appears that the local board could be more restrictive than the state, but it couldn't say, well, we're the Board of Health and we're not going to enforce what is otherwise provided for in state law. The other part, obviously, in the way Maryland manages emergencies, there's a specific provision in the emergency management or in the public safety article indicating that the emergency management agency, which would be COM, and the health officer are specifically subject to execute and enforce the rules and regulations made by the governor. So this is a continuation of the conversation that we were having earlier. It's a continuation of the conversation that's been ongoing in our community for a number of weeks, if not months now, and we just wanted to provide the opportunity to provide you some information and answer any questions that you may have.
Could you repeat that last, last couple of sentences, referring Mr. Stoner and Mr. Brown, they have to answer to or follow the guidelines of the governor, or is that what you just said?
Yeah, in the description of duties regarding a health officer, generally, even under a non-state of emergency, the health officer does not have the authority to issue an order contrary to that of the governor or the secretary. And particularly in times when there's a declared state of emergency, the emergency management agency and its officers, as well as the health officer, are to enforce the orders, rules, and regulations made by the governor under the authority of the public safety article.
Well, Kirk, so it's your legal opinion. Okay, we heard earlier discussion about a whole bunch of stuff that we were able to do this. You and the other two attorneys' legal opinion, I would hope you all talked about it, is that we're not as flexible as presented maybe by earlier. Or are we?
No, I think the state, I think the county has the authority to be more restrictive if it wants to than the state is. But I don't think it has the authority to be less restrictive or to abrogate the requirements that the state has put into place.
In other words, if it was 100-person capacity, we could say, let's make it 150, but we couldn't say, let's make it 50.
No, it's the other way.
Yeah, okay.
We could go back, yeah.
Commissioner Kiefer was right in that we don't have full local control. There's partial local control.
Gotcha.
If we're in Montgomery County and the outbreak is still really bad, they can say, wait a minute, even though everybody else is moving to phase 2, we're not going to do that yet. So they can be more restrictive, but not less.
I got it.
Commissioners, more comments? I have one.
Now, I mean, again, I'll just say, again, to make clear, the county, the health officer has closed no businesses in the county.
Correct.
And obviously, the guidance they have been providing has been passed along from state offices.
Correct.
My question is with state licensing. Who has control on issuance and revocation?
I guess it would depend on what it would be. Say, for instance, for a restaurant, we do the licensing with the delegated authority from the secretary. So technically, we could with the concurrence of the state health department for a restaurant.
Does the commissioners have control, direct control of that?
It's not my understanding. I would look toward Kirk for that, but it's not my understanding that that's all a state function.
I'm concerned we tell a business to open, we open up Washington County, and then the state pulls their license, and they go out of business for sure. And I don't, if we don't have that response, if we didn't close them down, how can we open them is kind of my open-ended question for everybody.
And again, I mean, every business needs to make its own determination regarding what its legal obligations are under the executive order as well as all other existing laws and regulations.
And as health officer, I have no authority whatsoever in what stage we move to, what businesses open, certainly giving guidance when asked, and we seek that clarification from the state. But as far as approving openings, I don't have that authority as health officer.
I had a question from a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
I think you might have addressed it. A similar business of hers was allowed, or supposedly being allowed to open in another county,
Mm-hmm.
but hers couldn't. Did you ever find out what that was about, or?
Is that in reference to gyms?
Yeah.
I actually reached out to the health officer in Frederick County, and that they are closed.
See, there's a lot of confusion on all this, folks. This isn't easy, what we're doing, and I'm gonna
Back
read.
to the Valley Mall, I've heard all sorts of things on the Valley Mall.
Yeah, and the Valley Mall is not closing. They have, 4 stores open, but have outside.
Outside, yeah, ones that have outside entrances can open.
And the snafu is the concourse is enclosed.
Correct.
Do we have any authority over that part?
No, it's in the pretty clear in the executive order that it's to remain closed unless there is a grocery store or a pharmacy that would be within that concourse. They could be open, but no other stores within the mall would be able to be open.
So when Bill Weibel, if you're listening, watching, when Bill and I suggested throw a tray of Advil at one of those stores, that still wouldn't qualify for a pharmacy.
No, they would have to go through the regulations for a
Yeah,
pharmacy.
A nice try or thought on how to circumvent the rules, but or live within the rules,
Correct.
I should say.
Mr. Stoner, do you think, and Mr. Brown, if a business felt like they could open and keep in the spirit of the governor's executive order, they can open, and I realized that that might be a decision more so of a locally owned and controlled business. I've spoken to some owners of some like national franchises, owners of stores that are corporately owned as well, and they tell me that if the governor's orders say they cannot open, the Valley Mall being one, like McDonald's, they can't violate the governor's order, regardless of what the local county says. But if a business owner feels that they are able to open in the spirit of what the governor's orders is, and they open, what would happen? If
If there was
someone, if a private citizen or a shopper disagreed?
If we received a complaint, then we would investigate that complaint.
You
and
automatically close the business?
we would consult with the state regarding that. There's a process to go through with compliance. And then they would determine whether, first and foremost, that business was able to be open. And if they were able to be open but maybe operating in an unsafe manner, then we would go through corrective
Does the
actions.
law require you to reach out for that interpretation to the state officials, or can
Yes.
that interpretation be made locally?
I have to consult with the Maryland State Police.
You have to. Okay.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes in direct opposition to what our senator and delegate said today, that we can decide that locally. That's what's really frustrating about this. You know, I'm sorry. I will vote today to sign a letter that we want to reopen our businesses and let the governor say no. I still don't think we have that authority, and I would want the delegation to sign on to that if they're telling us we can do that. Let them also sign on to that letter. But I'm sorry, I appreciate everyone's wanting to reopen. It doesn't sound like we have that authority anywhere. It hasn't been proven to me in statute anywhere where we can do that.
So you receive a complaint. If you were to receive a complaint on a business opening up today, how long would that process take for you to be able to give them a final, a definitive answers if they could remain open or if they would have to close?
Well, we've never been faced with that situation as of yet, but I don't think that it would take very long. I mean, the state's been really responsive on getting back to us.
So a couple of days?
I would think at the most.
Okay.
Yeah,
At the most.
I know the several businesses that I've called you about, Tom mostly. I've had an answer that day. Yeah, and so,
I disagree with that because I asked for 3 weeks and for about the camps opening, and it took you guys, and you said you're calling every single day about it until we get guidance, and it was about 3 weeks until we got guidance, and that's when the governor came out and said it. So it didn't happen overnight, and these are businesses that could have been opened, but we didn't get any information back. So I mean, so it's not like the state is coming back next day or 2 days. Sometimes it's not coming back at all until the governor says, "Hey, I've done it."
I would say in the vast majority of cases, they come back fairly quickly.
Then I'm all right with that, but it's not there. You know, that was a very specific case that I know we talked about it, and I emailed you, said I haven't heard anything, and every day you say I'm trying every day, I haven't heard anything. Every day I haven't heard anything. And these are businesses that, you know, the YMCA, our own camps, Antietam Recreation, that have to hire a lot of people, and they all ended up being weeks behind because we couldn't get guidance to them.
And in that particular case, that was guidance being developed for those individual businesses to start back up, as opposed to a complaint coming in.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
it's
I understand.
a
The
little-
CDC had the guidance out a month before we did, and they said it fine, and we basically followed the CDC's guidance. So, you know, and I know it's not your fault, and I mean nothing. I'm just getting frustrated with the lack of response from anybody in the state office. I know the senators and delegations are. The lack of response on anything. You know, we've sent a letter 4 weeks ago. We sent a letter 2 weeks ago so that we could have the authority with you guys, with our hospital systems, that we could open up Washington County in a controlled situation that benefits Washington County. So we'd have that authority to do that. And we're getting nothing. And we're being treated like we're in Montgomery County and PG County, but we're not. We were told we were going to have 180 surge in the hospital, and I think our surge was 14. So this ended up being a lot less than we thought, and we did a great job here in Washington County, and we're ready, able, and willing to open up, but we just don't have the authority, and that's where, you know, I think as the five of us, we need to be pushing, trying to get that authority so that we can do it, and not sitting back and waiting for it, because that's not going to happen. We're probably going to get something tomorrow that's going to give us a little bit more. We'll be a little bit more happy, but then by Friday we'll be upset that there's another problem. So that's why I am willing and ready to push the state on anything that we can do, and if we need to sign a letter every single week sending it to the governor, I'm willing to do that, because we need the authority to be able to open up Washington County. Mako, Commissioner Klein was on the call. We had a very wide discussion yesterday, but they're hoping to put a letter.
Rural County.
Yeah, Mako's Rural County Coalition. is hoping to put a letter that will be Thursday after the governor's thing on Wednesday saying, hey, the rural counties want regional control.
But third letter is going to be general with that
Yeah,
statement.
it's just going to say the rural
They also
counties want
stated
regional
it was up to the individual counties to write the negative consent letter.
Has there been any of the 24 counties in Maryland? 24?
24.
23 in Baltimore.
Has there been any of the 24 counties, other than whatever Ocean City did, that has went ahead and did their thing? Do we know that? I'd love to know that.
Not to my knowledge. I'm not in tune with all of them, but I have not heard that.
So not one county that says, go away, Governor Hogan, we're going to do what we want.
Is
Not
that
to
what
my
Ocean City
knowledge.
did? I mean, I've seen conflicting stories about.
Ocean City's just not enforcing anything. Yeah. I mean, before the boating thing, there was plenty of boats out in the water having just a good old time.
Who enforces that? Is that the local police?
I guess it's state police, isn't it?
It goes state police or county.
Tourism, too much tourism money there.
And just like the boardwalk.
And did Ocean City write a letter of negative consent, or they just said look the other way?
I have no idea.
Yeah, they didn't make a vote or anything.
So why can't that be done here? I'm not endorsing that. That's just a question, in case I'm quoted.
I could endorse that, but
Is that a
but
motion?
I think
President Klein?
one of the issues is though we don't have a police department that reports to us like the city of Ocean City has a police department that supposedly I would assume their mayor and council can say, don't check people with out-of-state license plates or however the checks may be made. We don't have a police department that reports to the county commissioners.
I think my point is, if Ocean City is the only one in the whole state of Maryland, if there's strength in numbers, if everybody wanted to get, that's sort of my point is how, if this was loophole enough to do this, wouldn't there be 10 counties doing this?
Well, it's the same thing. Before they had opened up to outdoor seating, there's a whole bunch of counties and cities that opened up outdoor seating, and they just closed down a road and did it. It wasn't part of the restaurant. Annapolis did it. They closed down a road and said, get to-go orders. Restaurants didn't do it. So there were other counties doing things. Or maybe it wasn't a county. It could have been a city or municipality. So again, I don't know if it was the county or if it was the city of Ocean City. Annapolis, they closed down a street. Other people did things.
Well, legitimately, I think someone said it, Hagerstown's charter government, they could just say, okay, we're doing it.
All 9 towns are charter.
Yeah.
I don't think charter government could still override a governor's veto. I mean,
But they could do it without us if they wanted to.
Sure, without us,
I think
but
that's the point.
do they still have the authority?
No.
Okay.
I agree with you. I'm not convinced we have
The reason I asked, someone asked me about, well, see if only Washington County were charter government, you could reopen.
Not necessarily.
No.
I got you. Yeah,
I understand.
I agree with you. I'm not convinced we have the leeway to do it.
No, I don't think I've said this, I don't think anything that's specifically stated that we cannot do, we have the authority to do. I believe if we can find a loophole or find in the guidance that there's something that we can do, then we should be able to do it. The example I will use, the same thing, is the governor applauded the communities that closed down streets and put outdoor seating. He said that in his speech, and he goes, and now I'm opening up outdoor seating. But the weeks before, he said, good job, and he mentioned different communities that did it.
So I guess my question is when we talk about guidance, the executive order specifically states that the Secretary of Health through MDH has the authority to make additional orders in relation to the executive order to help with public safety or with public health. So the guidance that we're getting is coming from MDH and from MSP, which is compliance and health. So my question is where should, it appears there's an issue with where this guidance comes from, so where should the guidance come from then, is my question. Because right now, everything that's brought to us, we're taking to MDH, we're taking to MSP, which is where we're supposed to go with it. Is there a question, is there a question where we should be going for the guidance from this body?
No, my question is, why do we need to go for guidance? Because the cities that closed down their streets and put tables out there, I guarantee if they went to the state and said, hey, can we do this? The state would probably come down and said, nope, that's not allowed. They went ahead and did it, and the governor said, good job, guys.
Well, I mean, speaking for myself, I seek guidance because as a state official, as a state employee, and being delegated the responsibility to be involved with the executive orders and making sure the executive orders are followed. Frankly speaking, I'm not breaking the law. I want to make sure that what the decision that I make is consistent with state policy and it's not breaking the law. That's the bottom line for me.
And you don't want the business
To be in it,
Break the law and
opening,
Right.
having invested a lot in preparations, and then having the state police show
Right.
up saying,
No,
Well, you gotta shut down.
Again, I'm not saying anything that is specifically stated, but like I've said, in that it says we can open up the fields. It says 10 people. We can abide by those rules. Unless
But what if bases are loaded?
Great. That's
More than
not
nine.
That's 14.
And
Have more than
I-
9 people on a team.
Commissioners, we need to,
You're gonna have everybody
have
sitting in a dugout, or you're gonna have?
I have
some of the team here,
150
some of the
people
team-
inside. I can have 150 people inside a halfway park's pool, but I can't
with the
have 9
proper amount of
people.
lifeguards.
And-
Yeah, with
and
the
Court,
proper
you
amount
need
of
to
lifeguards.
It looks like we're gonna have a problem with.
and
Yeah,
get
so we have 100 people, but I
clarification
can't have 9 people in a field that's bigger than halfway pool.
So I've received information back from the state compliance officer that says, under the current order, they cannot host a sporting event with more than 10 people. So unfortunately not.
And that's from whom?
That's from Sergeant Travis Nelson, the state compliance officer for MSP.
That's who you should be having your debate with.
I will call him right
That's
after
the
this
point
meeting.
where we should solve.
Yeah, I'll call him right after this meeting.
All right, commissioners, any other comments? We can close this discussion up.
Thank you, you guys.
Thank you,
Thanks.
guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. And again, this has nothing against you guys. You guys are doing a great job. I'm just frustrated with the response from the state and the lack of clarity and the rules that do not make sense when you have conflicting rules.
I agree with that too.
And unfortunately, sometimes you look to these two individuals and, those two individuals get looked at, and the people with frustrations are expecting them to make the call and make the decisions when they have someone to answer to as well. So, in summing it up, we just need to respect their positions and their opinions and their authority, and just like we have to respect ours.
Okay, good summary. All right, motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Thank you very much.
Earl, if I could have that
Yeah, I'm gonna-
sergeant's contact